Prime Minister Justin Trudeau paid a surprise visit to Canadian forces in Kuwait, making a detour there while on his trip to Africa and Europe. It's been a tense 6 weeks for Canadian troops there after an escalation in tensions between Iran and the U.S. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, is traveling with the Prime Minister. David?
Well, Dawna, this really was kind of a pitch stop for the Prime Minister. He spent about 90 minutes on the base, most of that shaking hands with the troops, Canadian Forces members who are serving here as part of Operation Impact.
About 650 Canadian soldiers are involved in Operation Impact, mostly in training and intelligence missions in Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq. But many of the soldiers stationed in Iraq were pulled back to Kuwait. They were trying to avoid getting caught in the crossfire when Iran fired missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq in retaliation for the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani on January the 3rd.
You've all had a volatile past few weeks.
It made for nervous family members back in Canada.
Your families were certainly worried about, but all Canadians were worried about, was your safety.
Trudeau, in the midst of a week of travel that is taking him across Africa, told the troops the country was grateful.
You step up every day, far from your loved ones, far from your families, because you believe in the values that Canada stands for.
The military would not permit any on-the-record interviews with uniformed personnel Monday, but the Foreign Affairs Minister says those troops who had to be pulled out of their mission in Iraq are keen to be back at it.
They want to be going back to their normal duties, but obviously this needs to be done in a safe environment and at the invitation of the host nation.
Now, at the end of this week of travel for the Prime Minister, he's going to be in Munich, Germany for a big defense and security conference. Lots of foreign ministers and defense experts. And it's really going to be there that we're going to have the substantive discussions about the future of peace in Iraq, about the threat in Iran, and where Canada fits in with all of that. Dawna?
Lots to discuss. David Akin in Kuwait City. Thanks. As the RCMP in northern BC continue to enforce a court order and remove protesters opposed to a natural gas pipeline, their supporters are disrupting travel and trade elsewhere in the country. For a fifth day, many Via Rail services between Ontario and Quebec were blocked. Supporters of the Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chief set up on a key CN rail line near Belleville, Ontario, leaving many travelers stranded. 21 services between Montreal and Toronto and between Ottawa and Toronto were cancelled because of the blockade. Since Thursday, more than 100 Via Rail trains have been cancelled and more than 16,000 passengers affected. CN Rail has been granted a court injunction to remove the protesters. Via says its trains will not operate until the issue is resolved.
What are we doing?
And early this morning, dozens of supporters of the Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chiefs were arrested in Vancouver after a BC court granted an injunction to remove them. They've been blocking access to Canada's busiest port and to Delta Port in Tsawwassen. It's all a show of solidarity for what's happening on a Forest Service road in northern BC. RCMP are enforcing a BC Supreme Court injunction to clear protest camps there so Coastal GasLink workers can build a $6 billion natural gas pipeline. Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chiefs maintain no pipelines can be built through their territory without their consent, though elected chiefs have consented. Today, protesters say the RCMP made more arrests. And on the future of another pipeline, the Trans Mountain expansion from Alberta to BC, the federal government is launching a new round of consultations. Finance Minister Bill Morneau says up to 129 Indigenous communities will be engaged to ensure they have what he calls a direct economic stake in the project.
This next step will be focused on different models of economic participation, such as equity-based or revenue-sharing options. And we'll seek to build momentum towards a widely acceptable option for the groups that we're consulting with.
Several Indigenous-led groups are interested in buying the pipeline. The talks will also explore whether participating communities are prepared to work together through an existing entity or a new one. Morneau says the government will profit when it sells the Trans Mountain pipeline, despite the 70% increase in construction costs estimates announced last week.